Awards and Features Editor at Variety, and I'll be moderating this Variety streaming room with the cast of Netflix's critically acclaimed drama series, The Crown. Here with me now is Josh O'Connor, who plays Prince Charles, Gillian Anderson, who plays Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, and Emma Corrin, who plays Princess Diana. Congratulations again on the fourth season. I don't know how this show keeps getting better and better, but I really do think this is my favorite season yet. The Crown is really known for its meticulous research before scripts are even written. For each of you, I'm curious, what challenges did you face in researching your roles? Where did you even start? And was there anything you learned about your characters that surprised you? Emma, I think I've heard that you really weren't that familiar with Princess Diana when you got this role.
Um, no, I wasn't. I mean, only in the sense that I think that we all are, as in I knew about her and that, I was familiar with her um being an icon in so many ways. But really I found that when it came to researching for the part for, the Crown's Diana, Peter's Diana, that we were creating, it was kind of more intricate research about her childhood and like her youth and working out kind of where her mannerisms and her voice came from. I suppose working from the inside out as opposed to being distracted by all the facts that we all are so familiar with. Yeah.
Jillian, what about for you? Because you're playing, as Emma said, these icons, but they're also so relatable. And I was surprised that I felt bad for Margaret Thatcher from time to time. I'm really curious. Did you have previous impressions of her, and did those change?
Well, I think they're relatable. Peter's version of these characters are relatable, and that's one of his great gifts, is making writing very three-dimensional characters, and characters who are, who you forgive somehow in their behavior, even if they behave appallingly sometimes. You see the balance of that behavior in other actions and aspects of their personality that make you kind of understand why they make the choices that they make, and makes you kind of question your preconceptions about them. And so in that complexity, I think was an aspect that maybe I hadn't even seen in the research that I had done of Thatcher. I'd certainly, I got very lucky this particular year of playing her, because there was this phenomenal BBC documentary about Thatcher that came out right when I was researching her. And it was also kind of the first time that there was, that we saw behind the scenes and saw her, before, when the cameras were turned on, but before she was necessarily on performing, when she was rehearsing moments of speeches, and we saw her, at home with Dennis, which, the camera's still rolling, so she's performing. But it felt like that was the first time, at least I had seen another side of her, and that was then extended in how Peter portrayed her. And so it's much more portrayal of her, or not, it's as much a portrayal of her as mother and as wife as it is her as prime minister. And so I think that, was quite interesting, fascinating, refreshing for some people to see.
Josh, what was it like coming back after playing Charles last season? Because we really do see a different Charles this year. He's sort of chafing at his responsibility, the things he has to give up in service to the crown. Did you have to go back and add anything to your research, or were you able to sort of pick up where you left off?
Yeah, I guess I continue. I sort of took a bit of time to look at this particular period. I guess my focus more in season 4 was to do with marriage and the breakdown of marriage and a breakdown of relationships, rather than season 3, which was to do with being seen and being heard, and to do with being a child with all this power, and the only way that power is kind of given to him is by his mother dying, and all that, the complexities of that. And obviously those continue, but the focus really for character in this season is to do with that relationship with with Diana. So I suppose I kind of focused a little bit more on the marriage side and that sort of thing.
And Josh and Emma, you have such amazing chemistry together. Even though we know Charles and Diana are doomed, in a weird way, I was kind of rooting for them in some scenes. Was there a situation where you had any kind of a chemistry read together, or did you just meet after Emma had been cast?
It was actually sort of strange. I got asked to come to set to read with Josh for an audition, chemistry read. And they were filming a pickup on season 3, and so I was taken to this like manor house in the middle of somewhere in the UK, where they were filming, and I met Josh, and we ran the scene a couple times, and then they offered me the part in the room, which was sort of very surreal and but a lovely experience to share with each other, I think. But
very, very X Factor.
Very X Factor. It was incredibly funny.
Like, who's gonna tell her? I was like, just tell her.
Yeah.
someone's got to. So it was great. It was such an amazing moment. Great.
Was it ever hard to, have these fights, because you both seem like lovely people? It seems like you really got along well.
I think the final fight was definitely. I mean, that was difficult. Those scenes are difficult. But I think me and Emma and I have talked about it before. It's like it was sort of difficult. It's also like a total pleasure, because ultimately that we both knew that was the kind of, that scene in episode 10 is essentially, the end of their story really as a couple. And so it always felt like, for me, that was the kind of closure, I guess. After that, having done that scene, it felt like we kind of rounded that relationship off. And whilst it was obviously hard at the end, I remember at the end when we were happy with it and we were going home, that was quite hard, because I did feel quite. Yeah. I mean, it was really shouting in Emma's face.
It was Shakespearean. It was such a good scene.
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
The whole cast is full of these great complex relationships. Gillian, I love your scenes with Olivia Colman. Even though Margaret is treated like an outsider for most of it, this lovely sort of coda where the Queen, recognizes her at the end. Josh and Emma, you both have wonderful scenes with Emerald Fennell as Camilla Parker Bowles. I'm just sort of curious, what they're like as scene partners. I mean, everyone in this cast is phenomenal, but Gillian, when you knew you were going to have those scenes with Olivia Colman, were you intimidated at all?
It's impossible to be intimidated by Olivia Colman. I think I'd already met her a few times, and she makes it very easy to like her, and she immediately drops her guard, which drops your guard, and so my biggest concern was that I'd have been working really, really hard for a really long time, and that I'd get there and I wouldn't be able to keep a straight face. I think that's what. And there was a camera test that we did where I hadn't found Thatcher yet, and so I was a bit nervous, and I was feeling a bit not intimidated in any way by her at all, but I was standing next to someone who had already done a season of The Crown, and I hadn't figured out a few things, and we were goofing around in between, walking from, that's all you do in a camera test, is walk from point A to point B, turn to the right, turn to the back, turn to the left, and we were goofing around in between, and then we were slightly scolded for not paying attention, and or at least time to focus. And she was so quick to die. I mean, like count of -1, and she was the Queen again in face and posture and everything. And I was still, trying to, pull my face back together again. And I thought, oh, I'm fucked. I'm so sorry. I'm in trouble. I'm in big trouble.
It's okay. When you say the F word, it sounds really elegant. So you get away with it.
I will.
Emma, one of the most talked about scenes is Diana meeting Camilla Parker Bowles for lunch. And again, there's so much going on in that dynamic. But again, Emerald Fennell is a fantastic actor and also seems like a lovely person. What was it like to film that scene with her?
Yeah, it was kind of bizarre because Emerald is just so lovely and we get on so well. And then we said they'd shout action, and suddenly there was this sort of frostiness, and that scene has it's so much at stake. And there are like layers and layers of tension and ice and tension and ice, and it's just so interesting. She's a very fun person to act with. She brings a lot of color to a scene, and like, I don't know, it was just really fun. Actually, the bit I enjoyed the most is was probably rehearsing that scene. Ben Karen did it really in an interesting way, where it was me, Josh, and Emerald rehearsing it together, and Ben put Josh at the table with us and do the scene holding Josh's hands. And the thing he said was, when whoever thinks they have the most power in that moment should hold Josh's hand. And basically, it was just Emerald holding Josh's hand the entire scene, and me just trying to like.
Oh my God. I love that so much.
Also, like, the most fun for me, because I just got to watch these two amazing actors like nailing it, and me just like literally just sat there with my hand.
What a great idea.
Brilliant. I addressed earlier the research you did for these characters, but I'm sort of curious because you all embody them so well. I mean, Gillian, you have Margaret Thatcher's low bow and her voice, and Emma, you really have to recreate Diana's most talked about looks. And Josh, there's a whole thing with your posture when you're Charles that is completely different. Can you talk about, putting on the wigs and the makeup and the costumes and how that helps you find your character?
I'm probably not the best person. I think I'm the only member of the entire cast who doesn't have a wig. There was actually an email that sent when we were stopped like a week from finishing. We'd almost finished, but because of the lockdown, and there was an email sent out to all cast in the whole of The Crown, which is like hundreds of people, and it was just to say we're just we don't know the situation. No one get their hair. Anyone who hasn't got a wig don't get their hair cut. And I was like, guys, A, there's pretty much only like a few of my scenes left, and B, I'm the only one that doesn't have a wig, so it's just me. They just didn't want me to cut my hair, and I did, so it's fine. So the wig didn't affect me at all because I didn't have one. But the costumes, I guess, yeah, they do. I mean, they all more so for you guys, I expect. But like, I think Charles's stuff, it's all about, he cares deeply about his clothing, and it's all, the way he puts his hands in his pockets and arches him over and stuff. So it definitely helps.
I think I realized because it was going to be, because of when I started the research and needed, just for my own feeling of safety, to start working on something to do with her quite early on. Obviously, reading and watching things, etc. But because I didn't have costume and wig and etc. At home, I started working on the voice quite early. And even though I heard it in my head, I knew what it was in my head, but I didn't feel like I could release it yet for quite a time. But the fact that I was working on it felt like I was, moving forward anyway. And then I realized at some point that, even though the other bits, the silhouette of what Thatcher is and her wig and her posture and her walk and the particular clothes and her girth and all of that is definitely adds to and tells a part of an accurate story of this human being. Without the voice, it wouldn't be Thatcher. Whereas you could have just the voice and none of those things, and I don't know, I felt, it suddenly occurred to me, I think, and maybe that's why it took me so long to reveal it or allow it to come out, as I realized how high the stakes were with her voice, because you could get the clothes wrong, but you'd understand it with the voice and the wig, and the wig, but something about the voice needed to be I needed to find that, or the balance of it between hers and mine, early on. And so, yeah, I've rambled. I can't even remember what your question was.
Well, I'm actually curious, the first time you did see yourself in like the hair and makeup test, were you thrown off by how much you looked like her?
Well, it's weird because for whatever reason, when I was sitting in hair makeup, the minute you put that wig on me, I look a bit like Thatcher. And that not, and yes, there was a lot of thought and effort that went into the makeup and other aspects of, how I held my face and everything. But there's just something about the combination of the wig and the fact that we've got quite a similar nose, I think, and hooded eyes. It's so quite early on, I think we all went, even before they'd done all of the makeup stuff. And I think everyone thought, well, we're on the right track. Forget.
Did you have any kind of prosthetics around the mouth, or were you just holding it that way?
No prosthetics, just
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's an easy trap to get caught in, though. I found that by the end of filming, I rely on it just a little bit too much by the end. There's this trick that gets me into her or makes me feel more like her. It certainly became something that different aspects of, that I was, just pressing on it just a bit more by the end.
And Emma, what about for you? You're recreating so many of Diana's iconic looks. How much did you collaborate with the costume and the hair and makeup people?
I'm not sure there was much collaboration, as in they're so good at what they do that you kind of just walk into fittings and I was just always blown away by everything that was there and everything that was being created. But I loved the process of getting fitted for the costumes and discovering her through her clothes. I mean, yeah, Amy and Sid, who do the costumes, had these books where they would take, they had pictures of they were going to put her in from, 16 to 28 over my arc, which is such a wonderful one. And yeah, I loved going into the fittings, and most of the costumes were either sourced from like thrift shops or vintage places or like, yeah, random places in Paris. It was very cool. And then sometimes they were completely made from scratch for me. And it was really cool. I like the ones that came together gradually that I was fitted into, and it really felt like I was part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
It's magic, honestly, and the same with the hair and makeup. A lot of wig fittings, but definitely paid off. Do you remember this? I think Josh, you might have been there when they thought that someone had stolen one of the Queen's wigs.
Yeah, we were on the what's it called, on the Strand. And there was like, we go there, that's where sometimes the trailers were, and we were there. Yeah, I don't know, they thought that someone nipped on, which by the way I think is pretty cool. If you got like broken onto the crowds and nicked a wig, is actually quite
what a steal. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
I don't know if it happened. Did it happen? Was it true or not?
No, I don't think it was true. I think they just lost it or something.
Okay. Brilliant. That's a good excuse.
Yeah. But I think I'm sort of the same as Gillian, in the sense that it was more what was like the mannerisms and the voice that really helped me get to grips with her and feel like I was living in her skin. It's a weird expression. Yeah, than the costumes. They kind of were the cherry on top, I guess.
Yeah.
For each of you, what was the most challenging moment or part of this season? I mean, Emma, we see so much of Diana's journey. We see her struggle with bulimia, which is just heartbreaking. We see how she's treated like an outsider. If you could narrow it down to like one moment or fact or specific scene that maybe was the most challenging for you.
Yeah, I think the bulimia scene's probably very, very challenging. I mean, I think I've spoken about it a lot in previous interviews, but I was very keen for that to be shown and shown sensitively, but so that it was there. I thought it was an important thing that should not be shied away from on screen, and also is a very important part of what she was going through, so should be depicted. But I don't think I prepared myself mentally for what it is really to put yourself in that position when you're doing that, because yeah, it's a bit harrowing to do, and that was difficult. But I actually think that some of Josh and I's more, the fight scenes we were talking about earlier, were actually the most challenging, to take our characters there when they hadn't really been there before. And also, I'm quite conflict averse, so it's not my area of expertise. Yeah, those scenes. But weirdly, I think those scenes that you find the most challenging tend to be the most rewarding in retrospect. I think I learned some of my most valuable lessons through that. I remember in one of those scenes, Jess Hobbs, the director, saying to me, we did a few takes of it, and then she said, try doing nothing with your face. I was like, what? And she said, just don't do anything. Just like be still. And I kind of didn't know what she meant, but I just did it. And then she played it back to me, and it's so strange how you can find so much, you can see so much emotion in someone's face with just stillness. And that was a great lesson. Yeah.
You're conflict averse, but you're playing Diana on The Crown. That must be hard.
Yeah, good lesson. I actually think I've got bolder in the last year, maybe from playing her. I'm glad you think she is bold. I think she is.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Josh, what about for you? What was the biggest challenge of playing Charles this season?
Yeah, I think for me, same as Emma, I guess, those scenes together, those kind of, I mean, I'm also kind of not one who knows too much about conflict, but I suppose, yeah, those scenes. But I think in some ways, as a kind of overall challenge, I think the resisting playing the end of the story is the hardest thing for those two, because it's so much, it's almost impossible. You know, I don't really engage with previous to this job, didn't really engage with that story and with Charles and Diana, but you can't miss it. And we all know, you know, the journey that it kind of where it ends up on. And so I think the hardest thing is actually, you know, I know that Emma and I from like very early on was that for us, the kind of the big achievement with telling this story was, can we make people, you know, people who know exactly what happens with Charles and Diana, can we make them believe even for a moment that it actually could work out? And in episode 6 particularly, that was our kind of game. And so far people seem to have, you know, we've tricked people for like even just for a moment to think that there was love there. And I think in a weird way that was kind of maybe the hardest task actually, but the biggest payoff.
I told you I was rooting for them, even knowing how it turns out. I was like, oh, maybe they could work it out. Gillian, what about for you?
Well, I'm not conflict averse. I love conflict. No, I think probably the audience scenes. I think just because there were so many of them, they were often block shot over 2 or 3 days, different episodes. And so, you know, figuring out what was different between them, trying to make them different, where she was on her journey that contributed to, that contributed to how she delivered information or reacted to the Queen in those particular scenes. And also feeling, I was so certain that, you know, not to say anything about Peter's writing, because it's brilliant, but I just assumed that the audience would be as bored by them as I was challenged by them, and that people would go fast forward. Oh, it's done now. We can get on to the, you know. And it turns out that people actually really liked them. I was so shocked when I heard that. I really thought that. I don't know. That says more about my sense of self-worth, I think, than anything. Well, no. Yeah, so yeah, but it was I felt the most nervous about doing those, so I guess that indicates to some degree my feeling about the challenge of them.
So season 5 is going to see a new cast, and Josh and Emma, after playing these roles, you know, knowing people are going to succeed you. Have you talked at all with the actors taking over your parts?
I think it's one of those things where you have to let them come to you. I think you have to kind of like, if they want to, they can chat to you. I mean, I'm so happy to, but I don't think I can make the first move, you know?
What's so brilliant about this show is it's about reinvention, and just as with like those kind of Shakespeare characters that you know that there's actors before you and there will be actors after you that will do it in a different way, and it will be gorgeous and different. And
I think the reference that I always use, and yours, Josh, I steal it, was from that film. I can't even remember it now.
I'm not there. The Todd Haynes film. Yeah.
They all play Dylan, and it's like they all bring a different quality, but it's a lovely thing.
Mm-hmm.
Great example. When season 4 of The Crown launched on Netflix last November, it was such a hot topic amongst everyone. What do you think it was about this season and this time period specifically that captivated viewers so much?
Because we're so good.
Yep.
Yeah. We're just really good.
Perfect.
No.
I don't know.
I think a lot of it is also because it's closer to the present, and so we're there's a lot of people who are alive today who, or more of a handful of people who are alive today who are remember and are moved by those memories. But also, I think there's a big thing that Pete always talked about, and the infusion of youth. The infusion of youth in the seasons, because because it's about specifically the middle bit with an Olivia and a Thatcher, us old cronies. The idea that there are these fantastic young actors to balance out all that curmudgeonly stuff is adds such life and light and also, not to mention, potentially even brings in a whole other demographic, which is going to be good for Netflix. And so I think those elements have something to do with that.
I think also just, I guess, Diana, Charles, Thatcher, they're all quite not controversial figures, but figures that were very much in the public eye, and that are often talked about even today, where I guess before that's not really the case, and talked about with amongst younger people. And I think, Gillian, you're spot on with the infusion of youth, and also with the music. Like, it was mad, I think, like hearing Stevie Nicks over like the Diana's club scene, or her skating to, I can't remember what it was, Duran Duran or whatever. I mean, it was just like, these are things we recognize, and I actually think that, especially for people who've been watching The Crown since the beginning, to suddenly be like, oh my God, I've danced to this, it's quite nice. I remember watching season 3, and what's the song that Emerald Camilla drives in to see you, Josh, and there's a song playing over, and it's like, it was a really modern song.
You think about the Elton John song that was playing, that Rocket Man or something being played while
that's Erin
driving, where Erin's driving.
It's not that, but that is also a great example of it.
Yeah, it's kind of just like, oh, sick. This is like
sick.
No, sick.
Well, it is such a fantastic season. It is such a great show. I want to remind everyone you can watch all the seasons of The Crown on Netflix now. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.